Greetings, everyone. This is Gerard, editor of Filipino Soul Magazine, aka S.G.I.B magazine. This stand for Soldiers Got Intentions. Believe that, because everyone should be sold into something, a dream, a goal, an idea, a train of thought, something. And on the P.B.G's production, a stand for Photos by Gerard, the best in freelance publicity photography. I just did a video. I'm going to post it up there for you after this. In fact, it'll come behind this. But I wanted to talk about a couple of things that I wanted to mention, but didn't mention. And that's the situation that went on with George Floyd. It was horrible, horrible to see what happened to him and to watch him. And it woke up not only the people in Minneapolis or the states, but the world. And it shined light on what needs to change. It was the second time that a black American was choked to death. And his last words was, "I can't breathe." And the police officer, and as I was saying, it was the second time that those words were spoken while a police officer murdered an individual. And I can understand them talking about defunding the police. To me, it isn't actually defunding the police or trying to disband the police, but there has to be another alternative to answer the crisis in communities rather than bringing armed thugs, or police officers who show no true compassion for the people they are being paid to protect and serve. What I want to do is I want to talk to you about racism in my life. I'm going to talk to you about a couple of incidences that happened to me in my life. First of all, you have to understand that I come from an integrated family. My older brother is as white as any other white person walking the street. Through a set of circumstances that I'm not going to go into, but he was my brother, 5 years older than I was. When I was young, so there was a time when automobiles had lighters that you had to push in and hold them till they were red before you light your cigarette. My oldest brother, who was 5 years older than I was, pushed the lighter in and he stuck it to my lips. When he was in school, high school or junior high school or wherever he was, he learned the words of darky and blackie and used to come home and beat me up. I have one image of being underneath the sink with his foot coming down on me, calling me those names. I guess he learned about prejudice, and I guess at that time he made a decision to ignore his black roots and live the white world life, which is what he did. He ultimately became a doctor, professor, lives in Florida. My mother never visited his home. I could only think that they didn't want her there, or wanted her to know, or wanted to see a black woman going, because they would have to explain who she was. And to explain, he married a nice white nurse, and they had nice white children. They lived happily ever after. But I remember when I was in rehab, I remember calling him when I had to, accept my past. And I called him and I told him, and I remember those days when he used to beat me up and call me names because I was black. And I said, "I want you to know I forgive you." And he hung up on me. My father, who was white, who on his birth certificate it said Negro, I guess he was a white-skinned Negro. And I remember when he used to set my brother and I, who was also black, I had an older brother that was white, two of us was black, and my younger brother was white. He would sit us on his knee and he says, "Although your hair is different, although your skin is different, I love you all the same. And that was the only time in my childhood I heard the word love when it was directed toward me was from my father. Later on, I found out that he wasn't my father, all that stuff, but we're not going to get into that. But we're talking about racism. So, and so that's what I learned. I grew up in the South. I grew up before they integrated. All black school. And it was so funny that I would run from the blacks because I was from the North, and I would run from the whites because I was black. So there was really no safe haven for me other than around girls. And I think that's when I became a lot more friendlier with girls than I did with guys. Okay. My cousin and I were walking one time from town, and we had a long way to go because we missed our ride. And this car passed us, convertible, and it blew his horn and shouting all kinds of names at us. And then it stopped and it backed up, and we saw somebody skid up in the back seat with a shotgun. We ran in a cornfield, and we laid down between rows of corn with shotgun blasts over our heads. So I know about racism. I'm one of the last generations to see all 5 original Temptations perform. I'm very proud of that. But I also picked cotton. I plowed with a mule. I hung tobacco. Raised hogs. At first, we used to go to the South as a vacation. But when we were sent there, in lieu of going to a home, my grandmother said, no McCoys ever going to a home. They can come down south and live with us, my brother and I. So I learned about farm work. I know what it's like to work in a field, picking cotton. I know what it's like cropping tobacco. I know what it's like stringing tobacco. You know, I know all about the work that we had to do on the farm and throwing it on a drag. A drag is like a drag that a mule pulls, and you put your tobacco on there. The sacks that are with my grandmother, we used to fill up picking cotton. So I know all about that. Now I remember there was a time when I went to California, and I remember sitting at a bus stop, and I just arrived in California, the land of milk and honey, and I remember sitting on a bench, and somebody drove by and threw a rock at me and called me nigger. I said, wow. I said, this can't be happening in California. This is California. This is not supposed to happen here. And to this day, I do not sit at benches on bus stops. I remember a friend of mine, Bobby Lavandowski, we just came in from shopping with another friend and his wife. And his wife was sitting on the chair, and we're standing up and we're chatting. And I see her out the corner of my eye, and she's looking at me. And I'm thinking, wow. Well, you're making it too obvious, darling, that you got a crush on your brother, And sure enough, when she finally went to say something, she said, nigger, like this, and she threw her hand over her mouth. Her husband was so embarrassed. Everybody was like this. And she said, I'm sorry. I said, it's okay, little girl. You were just telling me what was on your mind. I remember once in Charleston, South Carolina, when I was on tour, and this one guy who worked with me, he took me to his house. And we're sitting in the living room, and we're watching the news, and we're talking about the current events and all this stuff. And he got up and went into the kitchen, and his wife said to me, she says, I never knew black people can be so smart. So there are a lot of incidences in my life where racism has reared its ugly head. I remember being in a store at 7-Eleven in Long Island, New York, and I went there, and a girl with coffee, and 3 sisters came in, and there was some white girls there, and said, so I walked in, and I said, good morning, ladies, talking to the sister. They didn't reply at all. the white girls heard me and said, "Good morning." And I said, wow. So when they all got online, I said to the sisters, I said, you see, you wonder why black men go with white girls. I said, you see, I was saying good morning to you, but you, all three of you ignored me. You probably thought I was trying to come on to you, or I want your number, or I want to go to bed with you. I said, you see, this is what drives it, what happens. I remember applying for a job, and I filled out an application, and because I was a black and white lab technician. And so I left there, and I started wondering, I said, let me go back and see if they really accepted my application. So I went to there, I said, excuse me, I said, miss, I said, I want to put down another number on my application. And she started looking, she said, you know, I said, I just left, my application can't be far away. And I looked, I said, oh, there it is in the garbage. You know, the amazing thing is that when you tell people who aren't black, and you tell them about the subtle racism, right before their eyes, they can't see it. Like walking into a store and someone else walks in behind you who's not black, and the counter person turns to him and says, can I help you? I said, what am I, chopped liver? You don't see me? I was here first. So I wanted to talk about those few things, you know, in honor of George Floyd. I'm glad the country is changing, waking up, acknowledging, you know, and again, I understand about defunding the police department. It doesn't mean to disband the police department at all. It just means that, you know, they've gotten a whole lot of money, you know, to be armed to the teeth, you know, with armored personnel carriers and all this stuff for neighborhoods that just need some compassion. So there's also been proven that there are a number of police calls that police answered that did not need an armed officer or uniformed officer to respond to. You know? But somehow or another, someone always ends up hurt, you know, shot, when it could have been another. There has to be another layer of response to issues in communities of color other than a Gestapo type attitude of police officers. That I am for, defunding and redirecting some of those funds back into the community. You know, I was listening to the news. You know, when I grew up, we had PAL, we had the Boys Club, we had a number of different organizations that we can go to help guide us or give us an opportunity to be off the streets. I watched this politician talked about how when he was coming up, he was involved in the 4-H club and all this other stuff, and how they you know, traveled and went places and all this stuff. And then someone said, yeah, but where are those organizations today? They all been defunded. They all been disbanded. Even the Boy Scouts, all that stuff. You know, you need organizations. I know that's what got me on the right track, and that was joining an organization. And that's what needs to happen. More positive organizations in the community for youth people to get involved in. You know. But anyway, this is Gerard, editor-in-chief of Filipino Soul magazine. God bless the dead. The most saddest thing about the George Floyd incident is not only him saying I can't breathe, but him calling for his mother. Mom, mother, or whatever he called him, only to come to find out his mother had passed away earlier. And, you know, they sent the video of him kicking it or whatever that I saw. I said, damn, I might have been moving too fast with this brother. He seemed pretty cool, you know. But, you know, God bless him, man, you know. And if nothing else, you know, the incident that happened to him brought about change. And I'll finally see it happen. So this is Gerard, editor-in-chief of Filipino Soul magazine. Remember, dreams are nothing more than plans of waiting action. Never disrespect the elderly and always pull someone out. And sometimes you're only when to see your vision. Alright, also known as AKA Mr. Vegas, the Prince of Wannabes. Okay? And if you're lucky enough to have a woman, like Ollie Woodson, formerly singer of The Temptations, once sung, treat her like a lady. And ladies, if you're lucky enough to have a good man like me, make me feel like a king. And remember, I'll always love you more. Okay, enjoy this next video. A couple of hip-hop cats, I'm sure you'll enjoy it. I'll talk to you later. Peace.